The other thing I'd say is, how did you overcome it? What led you to be able to overcome and get to this point where you can look back on it without shame?
Um, there was a few sort of moments over the space of a year or so that really became like a bit of a big bang, like when all the matters and molecules like come together, and all of a sudden there's
Yeah.
this big explosion.
Yeah.
And I think that the two main ones were, well, three. I had a heart attack um, when I was, oh God, I think I was 19 or 20. So that was number one. And I remember mum spotted the warning signs, because this is the other thing. Like, there's not a lot of awareness around medical risk when it comes to eating disorders. So
No.
a lot of parents or loved ones get told to mind their child or their loved one at home and just wait for the referral, wait for the appointment. Nobody says, oh, by the way, if your loved one is bulimic, make sure you get their electrolytes tested and the potassium levels tested, and make sure you do this and make sure you do that, because it can lead to heart failure, heart attacks, X, Y, and Z. So, but my mum, because of the work she'd done in understanding eating disorders, especially when it came to setting up the charity, she knew straight away when I said I can't feel my arms. She was like, get in the car. But that moment, it was like an out of body experience. There's my mother, my own mum, driving her daughter to the hospital, and she thinks she's going to lose her. Like, that that was one of the first things then where I just was like, this isn't a game anymore. Not that it was a game, but it was like, how am I having a heart attack at 19, 20? So there was that. And then I went back into an eating disorder unit um, after that. And I had put enough weight on to be allowed to go out, go home at weekends. And I'd started to try and build up. I'd always been lucky that the lads from primary school were still my best mates to that day, 19, 20. And they were really like brilliant in terms of trying to get me to go out, because I was so ashamed. I didn't want to see anybody in Hull. I felt silly. I felt humiliated, but also I was tiny, and people would stare at me because, like, if I didn't have my collarbone covered up, like it just, yeah, I didn't look, I didn't have the confidence to be going out with a group of girls who were in their absolute blooming period. um, but the lads helped me, and mum used to make me clothes that fitted better. She was so amazing. And so I used to go out with the lads every weekend. And I remember um, one weekend I had gone home. I normally used to get the train from Sheffield, which is where the unit was. But another girl who was in the unit with me, she was from Hull, and she was doing really well, and she just started a relationship which was like massive for her, and is for anybody who's going through an eating disorder. And she was like, oh, he's coming to pick me up, do you want a lift home? And so I got a lift home in the car that day, and I remember my phone ringing, and it was my mum, and she went, hi darling, what time does your train get in? I said, oh no, I'm not today, I'm getting a lift. She went, oh, okay, so have you got any idea? And I was like, how long's a piece of string? Like, I don't drive, I don't know. And then one of my best mates, Danny, texted me and was like, what time are you getting back? And I was like, we're not going out tonight, are we? I thought we was going out tomorrow. And he was like, oh, no, I just wanted to know what time you were getting back. And then another of them, Brindle, texted me and was like, what time are you? And this went on. I was thinking, God, if there's not like a massive bouquet of flowers at the end of this trip, and like, like a big serenade, I'm going to be livid. And I got back home to Hull, and I walked through the door, and there was my mum and Danny sat there. And my mum just said, Gemma, I'm so sorry, love, but Lee's died. And I remember sort of like thinking, Lee, who's Lee? I was like, the only Lee I know is the Lee who gave me my first kiss when we were 7 years old at primary school, and was my first ever boyfriend. The only Lee I know is like my best mate, who has been there through thick and thin for me. The only Lee I know is the Lee who last weekend took me to one side and begged me to get out of hospital and to start living my dreams, because he wanted to be front stage, when I was on living my dreams, doing my acting, because he knew that's what I wanted to do. And I was like, that's the only Lee I know. And she just scoops me up and she said, it's that Lee. And so I just remember sort of going, well, what, how did it happen? Like, what was the accident? Like, what went on? And she said, no, darling. She said he took his own life. And I remember going to the funeral, and they allowed me out of the unit to go. And again, Mum was there with me and my dad. And I remember looking across to Lee's mum and dad and his newborn baby sister and his teenage sister, and looking at all of the lads, 20-year-old massive rugby players, all in a heap crying, and just thinking, I'm doing exactly the same thing, but much slower and right in front of my parents and my best friend's eyes. And I was like, if I can't do it for me, I've got to do it for Lee and my mum and dad. And so that was another sort of turning point. And then the final bit came when I'd gone back to Sheffield, to this unit, and I was begging my dad to keep me home, because it was just an awful place. Like, we've touched on it, but like the care system and the units and the way the staff treated you, like you were just a commodity, a waste of space, like a naughty little girl. Like, it was just awful. And I remember going back, and we got shipped into a family meeting, an emergency family meeting, by the head nurse, and they weren't happy with the fact that my mum and dad had set up an eating disorder charity, like, which is just crazy. Like, what's that got to do with them? But they weren't happy with me because I wasn't apparently conforming to X, Y, and Z. Anyway, I'm in this meeting and I'm like, I'm miles away. It's only been like a week or so since Lee had passed. And I'm like, I'm just not interested anymore. I've got no respect for these people. And I'm already planning what I'm going to do that night to join Lee, basically. And I heard a zip pull outside the door. And I don't know what it was, but I was like, that's my case. And I just jumped up, went outside, and there they were with my suitcase from the weekend, all with the other inpatients watching, and they were going through all my stuff to look for things that I shouldn't have brought back. And I just lost it. I've never been more angry, upset, and out of control in all of my life. And I begged and pleaded with my mum and dad to take me home that very day, that moment. And Mum didn't want to take me home because she was worried that I might die, and she couldn't cope with me. And that's no reflection on her, bless her. Like, she was just lost. And my dad looked me in my eyes and he said, if I do this, things have got to change. And I held him and I said, Dad, I'm begging you. And he took me home, and Mum didn't speak to him for weeks, and it was just horrendous. But I looked at my dad again and I was just like, he has taken the biggest sacrifice. He's sacrificing his marriage. He's sacrificed, like, my siblings didn't want me home. Not that they didn't love me, but they didn't want me there. Like, why would you? I was destroying everything. And it was just those 3 moments that came together where I made a vow to try and make a change. And I went into therapy, intense therapy in Hull 3 times a week. There were boundaries set up by Mum and Dad about what was acceptable and what was not. The eating disorder was not allowed to get away with things in the family home. And it was tough and it was hard, but I finally found a therapist who spoke to me about me as a human being. And the more I did it for the love of my parents and my family, the more I started to realise that I can actually live because I'm a decent person and I can love myself too. And it took a good 4 years, that recovery process. But then within a year, I'd got to drama school, and a year after, I was in Emmerdale.
Right, you got my eyes watering about 3 times in that story there. So I don't.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I get through it sometimes. I kind of like go on autopilot, but like it's very real in me and it's very there. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people often like say to me, and I take it as a compliment, that despite what I've achieved since, I'm very grounded and down to earth. And I think it's because of all these things that have happened.
Have you ever encountered an adult or child's behaviour that has felt difficult, overwhelming, or challenging? Have you sometimes felt at a loss of what to do, or know that you didn't handle it quite right? People are complex and unpredictable, and their behaviour can be like the weather. We've all made the mistake of looking out the window and feeling safe to wear shorts, but 5 minutes later wishing for an umbrella. But what if, like a weatherman, you understood how humidity, temperature and pressure all come together to cause the weather, allowing you to better prepare, predict and respond, and prevent ever having a picnic ruined by a thunderstorm ever again? My book, called Targeting the Positive with Behaviours that Challenge, helps you to become the weatherman of behaviour. It provides you with a toolkit to increase competency, confidence, resilience and empathy, so you feel more assured about how to respond to distressed or dysregulated behaviours in others, including those affected by trauma, mental health, neurodiversity, learning disabilities or dementia. Build better connections, achieve de-escalation and improve outcomes for yourself and those you engage with my celebrated 6-stage target model, a step-by-step process to reduce distress for everyone. Discover my empowering, person-centered guide in Targeting the Positive, written by me, Andy Baker, available from online bookstores worldwide. Find a link in the description and order today.